Good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of Europol, welcome and thank you for joining us today for the press conference and the Q&A session at the Europol headquarters in The Hague. We are here today to announce the takedown of critical online infrastructure with terrorist propaganda in two different operations that run in parallel: Operation Hopper 2 and Operation Al-Masa. I'm joined on stage by Jean-Philippe Lecouf, Deputy Executive Director Operations Europol, Captain Alberto Rodriguez Vasquez, Case Officer for Operation Al-Masa at the Spanish Guardia Civil, and José de la Mata Amaya, National Member of Spain at Eurojust. After the statements, we will allow questions from attending journalists first. If you're following us via the live stream, you will be able to post your questions as well afterwards. For this, please scan the QR code you will see in the live stream. Please only ask questions related to today's press conference in both cases. With this, I would like to turn the podium over to Deputy Executive Director Operations, Jean-Philippe Lecouf.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today, be it in person here in the room or via the live stream. My name is Jean-Philippe Lecouf. I am the Europol's Deputy Executive Director for Operations. You might be wondering why we have decided to convene a press conference on a Friday afternoon. Over the past week, law enforcement and judicial authorities agencies across Europe have been engaged in a critical operation targeting terrorist-operated websites. These very websites, which have been a source of propaganda, a source of recruitment, a source of radicalization. We will talk in details today of two operations, one which targeted the so-called Islamic State, which was led by the Spanish authorities and for which a command post was hosted at Eurojust, one which targeted religious and politically motivated terrorist organizations across the spectrum, and which was carried out here at Europol. Two operations with one same end goal: to disrupt online presence of terrorist content. We will shortly go into details of these two operations, but before, I would like to paint the threat picture that these websites pose. Terrorist-operated websites constitute a key threat in the landscape of global security, serving as pivotal platforms for the dissemination of violent ideologies. These websites enable terrorist organizations to bypass the enhanced moderation and the content removal efforts of mainstream online service providers, allowing them to maintain a persistent online presence. They are used not only to spread propaganda and incite violence, but also to recruit members, to raise funds, and to coordinate attacks. The content hosted on these sites often includes manuals for creating explosives and for committing attacks, and propaganda designed to radicalize and mobilize individuals. Today's announcements will shed a light on what law enforcement and judicial authorities are doing to respond to this threat. I would like now to pass the floor to my Spanish colleague from Guardia Civil, who will go into the details of the operation they have run this week against the propaganda machine of the so-called Islamic State.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. In 2005, Ayman al-Zawahiri, the then second-in-command in Al-Qaeda, allegedly told Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, the Al-Qaeda and Iraq leader at the time, that they were in a battle. And more than half of that battle was taking place in the battlefield of the media. Now, every other day, we are challenged by online terrorist propaganda productions aimed at designating targets in our cities and radicalizing members of our communities, creating a state of fear and unrest amongst our citizens and increasing exponentially the risk of terrorist attacks against Europe and its allies. Online terrorist propaganda has become much more than half of the terrorist architecture nowadays. Last Tuesday, June 11, Guardia Civil, in a joint action with the US FBI, has conducted an operation against terrorist propaganda online under the leadership of the Central Magistrates Court No. 1, the Prosecutor's Office of the Audiencia Nacional in Madrid, and with the invaluable participation and coordination of Eurojust and Europol, with a special mention to Europol, ECTC, and IRU. At this point, we have acted on dozens of servers and web hosting service providers established in the Netherlands, Germany, France, Estonia, Romania, Iceland, and the US, whose judiciary and law enforcement agencies fully cooperated with the Spanish judiciary authorities and the Guardia Civil. The operation was initiated in January 2022 after IS-related terrorist propaganda was found on the Elam Foundation website. After a series of rogatory letters were launched, engagement with the web hosting services providers allowed Guardia Civil to discover that the Elam Foundation was part of a scheme of websites operating under the umbrella of the Sar al-Khilafa network, a front for the IS media online strategy. The disrupted terrorist-operated websites worked as a node and an archive for terrorist propaganda, produced by the different IS media outlets, using a multi-platform approach to disseminate its contents through social media networks and messaging apps. So far, many of the items analyzed instigated the perpetration of terrorist attacks by different techniques, emphasizing the participation of lone actors and publicizing those attacks already executed, both in Europe and in the rest of the world. The network was designed to be resilient and low profile, and that explains its multi-server hosting strategy. It operated both on the surface web and the dark web. This design tried to overcome the previous takedowns carried out against the AMAC network and previous IS media infrastructure that has forced the organization to migrate to new online platforms. Yet again, it's not the first time Guardia Civil and its partners have dealt a severe blow to terrorist abuse of the internet. It must be underlined that the terrorist network, now disrupted, was a real media center and a historic library for IS and other terrorist organizations' contents, such as the magazine Voice of Khorasan, associated to ISKP, probably the current single major terrorist threat against Europe and its allies. The network also developed financing campaigns through cryptocurrency wallets and QR codes in a very innovative way to exploit the lack of central bank control over this kind of digital currency. At the same time the takedown was ongoing, 9 individuals of different nationalities, radicalized and or mobilized by the terrorist contents stored on those servers, have been arrested in a nationwide operation in the regions of Catalonia, Andalusia, and the Canary Islands, in a special deployment of more than 180 Guardia Civil agents. Al-Masa operation is a new landmark in the fight against online terrorist propaganda because it denies the adversary its online battlefield. It safeguards online free speech while stripping terrorist organizations, such as IS, of their online presence. It prevents the mobilization of the already terrorist members and the radicalizations of new ones. It strengthens the public public-private cooperation, and the engagement of online service providers against online terrorist contents. And last, but not least, the Al-Masa operation exemplifies the effectiveness of judiciary and law enforcement cooperation through European agencies like Eurojust and Europol, including the operational one like the deployment of the mobile office of Europol. Combating terrorist propaganda is and will be an essential strategic element of the Guardia Civil's approach in counter-global terrorism. The results of previous joint takedowns, like the one in 2019, proves it's possible to disrupt the terrorist propaganda flows and online infrastructures, taking the initiative out of the terrorists' hands. Thank you very much. Good day.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, everyone. My name is José de la Mata. I'm the national member for Spain at Eurojust. Thanks to Europol, first of all, for hosting this important press conference. I'm going to share with you that combating terrorism is a priority for Eurojust. And in line with this, we need to prevent the terrorists from spreading online propaganda and communicating amongst each other. Only by doing so, we can keep our citizens safe. Taking down major computer servers and blocking communication networks, as we have done this week, is essential. This helps the dissemination of dangerous propaganda and stops inciting possible attacks. From my personal experience as investigative central judge in Spain in the past, I have seen the complexity of investigations into terrorism and how widespread terrorist organizations operate and the complexity of the technology behind their propaganda platforms. Thanks to the excellent cooperation between many national authorities, we have been able to get good insights into the communication channels which now have been dismantled. And this is not only the important thing. This week's operations have delivered a huge amount of information, literally terabytes of them, which now can and will be analyzed. Also, the investigations have given us very important information on the financing of terrorist networks. And this information will be essential to continue combating the threats of these networks. All of this would not have been possible without excellent cross-border cooperation. My profound thanks goes to all national authorities involved. In the first case, to the Prosecutor's Office of the Audiencia Nacional in Spain, to Guardia Civil of Spain, and to the Investigative Central Court number 1 of Spain that together has launched and directed this operation and this criminal case. But besides to all the enforcement officers, prosecutors, and judges from all the different national authorities involved, and also, of course, to colleagues here at Europol. This is an example of very practical European cooperation in the interest of our citizens. And it is even more important because there have been as well other countries than member states cooperating in this operation. Liaison prosecutors from the United States and Iceland, seconded at Eurojust, and their authorities behind them have also participated very actively in all this investigation and in the coordination among all these national authorities. Thanks to all of them, and also to Eurojust, we can expand European Union judicial cooperation to important partners all across the globe. And Eurojust is the main hub for this judicial cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, the result we are presenting today is an important signal as well that terrorism is a constant threat. It shows that we need to remain extremely vigilant and continuously monitor online terrorist activities. We can count on the extensive expertise which has been built up over the years among judicial experts and law enforcement. And it is also a sign that we must keep investing people, time and technology into this, because only then we will be able to react as we have done this week. Then sharing expertise and sharing knowledge is vital, and as Eurojust and the national authorities have done, we will keep doing so in the future. At Eurojust, we stand ready to support the judicial authority in EU member states and beyond, also in third countries, to help combating terrorism. One of the important elements to highlight now as well is the Judicial Counter-Terrorism Register at Eurojust, which started in 2019 as an important tool for judges and prosecutors. It gives good insight in terrorist activities and concrete cases against alleged perpetrators. Last year, thanks to a change to our Eurojust regulation, precisely the register was given a wider scope, and this even more helps prosecutors and judges to exchange information and evidence more rapidly and in a better way. This register is as well another example of practical European judicial cooperation. We see a constant rise in terrorism cases being opened at Eurojust. And this is a sign as well of the trust in Eurojust that our national authorities, judges and prosecutors have. Last year, the number rose by 30% to over 200 concrete cases being handled. Of course, as you can imagine, that I cannot disclose any details of these cases, but it shows clearly that judicial authorities across the EU take the threat of terrorism very seriously. And Eurojust has built up the right expertise to support judicial authorities and bring together specialized on terrorism judges and prosecutors. Altogether, we are stronger, each operating, of course, from our different field of expertise, Europol, Eurojust, judges, prosecutors, law enforcement. But the common goal is that we will remain vigilant and joint efforts to combat terrorist threats. Thank you very much, and have a very nice afternoon.
Terrorism is complex, evolving threat that transcend borders, cultures, and jurisdictions. It is a global challenge that requires a global response. No single nation, agency, or organization has the capacity to combat this threat in isolation. This is where Europol and its European Counterterrorism Centers comes to play. You've just heard the detail of the Guardia Civil-led operation against the online presence of the so-called Islamic State. Our European Counterterrorism Center provided support to this operation. We deployed a team of Europol experts to Spain. Along with the deployment, we supported operation with multiple actions. This includes forensic analysis, OSINT, experts report on terrorist propaganda, liaising with the private sector, and the organization of operational meetings. In short, the full range of services and expertise was provided by Europol. At the same time, we were coordinating a different operation this week, right here from our headquarters. This operation, known as Hopper 2, targeted religious and politically motivated terrorist content across the spectrum. This operation was coordinated by Europol's EU Internet Referral Unit. You heard sometimes us talking about IRU. This is our Internet Referral Unit. It's a unit strong of 50 staff, which is part of our European Counterterrorism Center. Since 1 year, Europol worked together with 10 countries to identify, to investigate, to flag some websites operated by terrorists and violent extremists and their supporters. This year-long investigation culminated in a referral action this week, where Europol referred 13 terrorist-operated websites to hosting service providers to get them taken down. In addition, 4 servers were seized in Romania, in Ukraine, in Iceland, as part of this investigation. Our work is not finished. We already know that new websites will appear. We are ready for this, and we will refer them to hosting service providers when and where they appear. Europol has recently developed a tool in-house to make this flagging as quick and efficient as it's needed to respond to this terrorist threat. This platform is called PERSI and stands for the EU Platform on Illicit Content Online. Europol provides this single system that connects all EU member states with hosting service providers, more than 400 of them. Europol developed this tool to assist EU member states with the implementation of the Terrorist Content Online regulation. Having mentioned all these elements, I would like to conclude and come back to the operation for which we are here today. These operations are crucial to keep our online space as safe as possible. For law enforcement, our job is not finished. Already in 1 year, our PERSI platform facilitated nearly 25,000 referrals from 400 authorities, and it will continue. Let me close with saying that these figures show that successes like today are only possible with a strong and trusted international law enforcement network and with private parties that understand their social responsibility. Europol is working every day with all its partners, including Eurojust, to make Europe safer. And we will relentlessly continue to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much to our speaker. Thank you very much to the Deputy Executive Director of Operations, Jean-Philippe Lecouf. We are now ready to take questions from journalists attending in the room. If you have a question, please name your media and who do you would like to address. Please, you can go first. Microphone behind you, yes.
Hi, thank you very much. Richard Carter from AFP. Could you give us an idea of the 9 individuals that you apprehended? Can you give us a flavour of whether they were just disseminating propaganda or whether you had any feeling they might be proceeding towards some sort of terrorist action? And you said you recovered terabytes of information. Again, did this information contain any indications that there were forthcoming potential terrorist attacks? How will he be using this information, and what is it provided in terms of intelligence for you? Thank you.
I'm going to start on the second question you asked. This is the third operation we perform on these kinds of threats. Guardia Civil and Spain, we want to address the root causes of this radicalization. We want to create safe spaces on the internet. These servers, these terabytes of information you mentioned, what they are doing, if you go to the strategic analysis, the CEST of Europol, you'll see that in the last terrorist attacks performed by lone actors, probably these people access these very same platforms that we were just disrupted. That's a fact. So about the 9 arrested individuals, different nationalities, they are consumers, but we were very surgical in our response. Why? Because these consumers, sometimes they belong to vulnerable sectors of the community. So you have to be careful about that. And sometimes they are even victims of this radicalization. So we want to go straight for the root causes of it. And this is contained in the strategic actions of the terrorist through the propaganda. Taking these spaces of radicalization, of incitement, of mobilization, sometimes even of instructions, giving instructions to the militants, is essential. And doing that in a global approach. This is not a mandate of one law enforcement agency like the Guardia Civil. We look for strong partnerships with Europol, Eurojust, because otherwise there's not, the answer must be global and in a partnership. As I told you, this is the third operation on a row, 2017, 2019, and this last one, in which Guardia Civil was a part, I will say a key part of the operation, and we will continue to do that in the future.
Other questions? Yep. You first, then Imane F. afterwards.
Hi, Simon Gijshout, Dutch press agency ANP. I read about 30 languages that were used to spread the propaganda. I was wondering, first of all, whether Dutch is one of those languages. Yeah, that's what I wanted to know.
Well, we focus on the Spanish side of the investigation. The propaganda was mainly addressed to militants, to individuals that were located in our territory in Spain. So mainly we are focused on that side of the investigation, but we will be happy to share through Europol and through the channels the other information linked to other countries to allow other colleagues, other partners to perform their operations or appropriate action on those individuals.
All right, thank you. I also read that the servers were used for radio stations. Are those also taken out of the air?
I didn't understand the questions. Radio actions?
It's here in the press statement. The websites and communication channels such as radio stations, a news agency, and social media content. I was wondering, are those also taken out of the air by taking the servers out of the air?
Well, you go against the server and you disrupt the whole flow of propaganda communication. That includes all the channels that are linked to the main disseminator of the propaganda. That includes all those outlets that you just mentioned. So I think we aim for that too, and we were successful.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
So on country-specific questions, on Europol's website you will find by now 2 different press releases. One press release on Operation Hopper 2 and one press release on Operation Al-Masa. And you will find more information on a specific country because we received some questions on Iceland and different countries. Please, Imane for Effe.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the strategic relevance of this specific operation in comparison with the similar ones that have been carried out in the field. And by this, I mean also what is the new knowledge, if possible, to share that have been learned from this last operation.
Who do you want to address the question to?
Whoever can answer it.
Who feels best placed? Please go first.
Yeah, well, maybe I can answer. Well, it's a landscape that is evolving very quickly. So each time we have an operation, we need to invest a lot in finding where the websites are hosted and so on. So we don't learn that much about what they are, the content and so on. Most of the time the content are known to us, but what is difficult in this operation is to find where these content are hosted, on which servers, on which website they are broadcast and so on. So each time we conduct an operation like that with all the partners, each time we learn something new about a new trick that these propagandists are using to disseminate their propaganda.
If I might add something. Well, you ask why it's important, the importance of this operation, the relevance, and it's because, as I said before, we went for the root cause, and there is a direct link on the propaganda that was being disseminated and the possibility of increasing exponentially a terrorist attack. It's clear as that. And the other thing we learn is that they learn that we learn. So they are keep advancing, going forward. It's very difficult to neutralize. We'd like to do so, but they are looking always for spaces, and they learn, as we do. And this is a race in which we at least we try to anticipate, to prevent terrorist attacks. And you go for the root causes for that. You don't go exactly for the consumer, because the consumer sometimes is just belongs to a vulnerable community. So that's the importance of it.
Thank you. More questions?
If I may.
Yes, please go ahead. Eurojust.
I think it is important as well to take into account that this kind of operations is not the end of an investigation. It is important to highlight and to have clarity in the concept of criminal justice chain that ends with the starting of the investigation and ends when, after a due process of law, judgments are finally achieved. And in order to do that, there is a first very important part that we are finalizing today, that is the gathering of evidence. After a long investigation, a thorough investigation carried out by the law enforcement officers of Guardia Civil, under the direction and the assessment, the legal assessment of the prosecutors and judges, a lot of evidence has been gathered so that in the end it has resulted that it was proportional and according to the law to carry out this major operation. But in fact, now the second and most important phase starts now. There are, as I said before, terabytes of data that must be carefully and deeply analyzed in order to extract more evidence, in order to identify countries where these contents were directed and put this information as well at the disposal of all the countries that may be affected. And then we will have to finally assess all this huge amount of information and evidence and decide by the prosecutors on the indictment and then prosecution of the responsible person that may be accused. So I would like to highlight that this is not the end of the story, but just a very important landmark in the process, but just one that opened now the door to a huge amount of work that will be carried out as well in coordination by all these countries, analyzing the outcome and providing the appropriate pieces of evidence to the prosecutors and judges to continue towards the final and desirable end of the process that will not necessarily be a conviction, hopefully, but a fair trial under the law. And then that will be the aim, and then the judgment that will be pronounced after that.
Does this answer your question? Any other question from your side? Yes, please go ahead.
Isabel Ferrer from El País. Do you have at this moment any idea of the profile of what you call consumers of these websites?
Sorry, excuse me, repeat, please.
Do you have any idea at this moment of the profile of the consumers of these websites?
Well, as I said before, consumers usually belong to communities that it's a fact that they are vulnerable. If they access these channels, usually they have free will, of course, but these products are so strong, so addressed to them, that there is a big power of radicalization. And the outcome usually is joining these groups, becoming lone actors. So you cannot establish a clear profile, but I'll say that the main feature that unites them is precisely that they belong to vulnerable communities.
If I may add on this, maybe just I will not speak about the specific investigation of Guardia Civil, but what we have seen across many operations is that these websites intend to get in their nets as much as possible as people. So there's no specific profile. It can be any of a person that belonging to any community, but that can be radicalized through this website. The purpose is really to put at the disposal of anyone that has a bit of a contact this content, to try to drag them into actions most of the time, into reflection, into actions, and so on. So it's really something that we have to keep in mind. It's why it's a danger, because and we see that when some attacks of so-called lone actors are happening, that often they were on this website triggered by somebody or even by themselves, looking for this kind of content and being a kind of engaged more and more with this kind of content and driven to action on that. So on a more general, let's say, point of view, we must keep in mind that any kind of public can be reached by these websites. And it's what makes them so dangerous.
Can I add something?
Yes, please go ahead.
To illustrate what I told you about, there's no profile, but we've seen a lot of cases with minors and persons with mental issues. That's something that has increased dramatically. That's why you cannot have any response, not only the punitive one. You have to look for specific response for specific problems. But minors and mental issues is something that we are seeing more and more, and we want to be prepared. Guardia Civil wants to be prepared for giving a response, not only law enforcement response, but a more holistic response to this problem.
Thank you. More questions from the floor? Good, because we're getting quite a few online questions. I would then continue with some of the online questions of those following the live stream. There's a first question on if you have further insights into how the cells were financing the operations. And follow-up question, where do you see the role of banks in the fight against terrorism?
I will maybe start. Well, there's many of ways of raising funds for this kind of cell. It can be through some collection of money in some areas. It can be also through online services, through cryptocurrencies for sure, which is one trigger. We know that well, the banking systems is vigilant about this kind of fundraising, but sometimes it's not that big amount of money that are difficult to trace, and so most of the time, and it's not very expensive operations. In fact, you can hire space on a server for a few €100, and you can build your website very easily if you have the knowledge with one computer. Few €100 per month to rent a space on the servers, and then it's done. So it's not big operation in terms of cost, and it's quite easy to get the money to do it.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. In this operation, there was a specific case of financing through cryptocurrency and through wallets, QR codes, and we have to keep in mind that this is not, as the director said, not big money. We are talking about microfinancing. The sales needs, crowdfunding was invented years ago. So they want to crowdfund themselves with these opportunities that crypto, for instance, offers. That's why, well, I think there's legislation waiting to be passed about the control of the digital currencies on a central bank level. And this is probably something that must be addressed to legislator. To pass new legislation to control these flows of money and to go again for the root causes that might increase the risk of a terrorist attack.
Thank you. There are a number of questions on those that consumed the website. I think you already answered these small consumers, vulnerable groups. But there's also a question on the terminology spectrum means the groups targeted by Europol. So could you elaborate a little bit on the spectrum that was targeted by Europol?
Yes. When we speak in Operation Hopper 2, the spectrum was very wide of the kind of a website that we are talking about. It's why it's all, in fact, that is religious or politically radicalized or violent extremism. So it can go really from jihadism to right-wing extremism, going to left-wing extremism. It's all the content that can drive people to take actions on these websites, whatever the ideology or the religion is behind it. Each time there's a danger for the society, for our fellow citizens, when these operations are targeted to take down these websites, any kind of website.
Thank you for this answer. There are a number of questions about the timing and the momentum of the operation. Why this announcement now, and are you working to secure the UEFA and the Olympic Games? So if there's something you would like to address.
Well, maybe I can say that, well, for sure, UEFA Championship, Football Championship and the Olympic Games are major events that are happening in Europe. Like a few weeks ago, the Eurovision Song Contest, where Europol was involved and is involved and will be involved to support the member states in securing these kind of events. This operation is not clearly linked to this event, but as I said, it's 1 year that we are working on it, and at some point we need to take actions. So I would say that it's coming timely, but it's not done on purpose.
Thank you very much. There's also a question if arrests in other countries are planned. I guess this is nothing we would like to address in case arrests might be planned.
Usually we don't announce arrest before.
There's a very general question, maybe for both or for all three. What's, in your point of view, the most active terrorist threat in Europe at the moment? Maybe not case-related, but a more holistic question.
Well, I mentioned about the voice of Khorasan. ISKP, I think they are presenting one of the biggest challenges for Europe right now, not only for Europe, other countries, but if we have to rate the threat, level of threat now, probably ISKP would be the priority.
Yes, well, we try to be, for sure, I can subscribe to what was said about ISKP, but in Europol we try to keep our eyes wide open on all kind of threats, and we have seen threats coming from different angles. We see a lot of polarization in society, a lot of people radicalized in a lot of countries. So what we try to do is not to focus too much on one single threat, but to keep our spectrum wide open in order to be able to warn and, if possible, to prevent any kind of threat to happen.
Thank you very much. There's one question that came in on where the servers are located. I think this is information you can find in the press releases on Europol's or Eurojust website. If there's no final question from the floor, I would otherwise close the press conference for today. No, this is not the case. Then I would like to thank the speakers, Jean-Philippe Lecouf, Deputy Executive Director Operations Europol, Captain Alberto Rodriguez Vasquez, Case Officer Operation Al-Masa of the Spanish Guardia Civil, and José de la Mata Maya, National Member for Spain at Eurojust. Thank you for your attendance, thank you for your interest, and wishing you a good afternoon.